I've got a really special guest today. It is Mr. Ed Clancy. He is a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. Rio, London, Beijing. He's also a bronze medal in his home games in London as well. We start out this conversation and we talk about all the way back when he moved into that house, Mark Cavendish, Geraint Thomas, him, Matt Bramier. How did they build what they've built? What happened in those early years to create these behemoths in the cycling world? What were the habits? What were the values that were instilled? Some of this stuff absolutely blew my mind. It's a privilege to sit down with one of GB's most decorated ever Olympic track cyclists, Mr. Ed Clancy. Ed, welcome to the Roadman Cycling Podcast.
Legend, thanks for having me, Anthony. Looking forward to it, mate.
Great to have you. Great to chat some shit before we even started as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we could have made a short, good podcast already, Carl.
Take me back to the very start. A lot of your accomplishments have been well documented in the full media glare, and we'll get on to some of the highlights of an amazing career. But when you started all the way back, like was it the team house in Manchester? Who was the lads around you? You had Cavendish, Geraint Thomas. Like, you're just a bunch of kids. Did you have any? Obviously, you're dreamers as kids, but did any of you guys ever dream the extent of what reality will become?
You know what? I think we all hoped, and you're right, we were all dreamers. And I mean, there was something about that group. There was only 6 of us on this first year that was inducted into this academy, right? And this academy.
Who's the 6?
So there was Geraint Thomas, Mark Cavendish, myself, Matt Bramier, Tom White, and Bruce Edgar. Now, it's potentially only Bruce Edgar and Tom White that you wouldn't have heard of there that didn't make it in inverted commas, or I've got to say, they've most certainly made it in other ways in life. Now, we had this guy called Rod Ellingworth, right? And he was totally unheard of right then. And, he was our coach. For the cyclist enthusiast, you'll know Rod Ellingworth is a guy that went on to sort of be the performance director in Ineos for a few years. And, he's a big hitter in the world of cycling these days. But back then, he was younger than I am now. He was sort of out of, in his own words, a relatively mediocre sort of cycling career. I believe Rod went to Brailsford, who was the performance director at the time, pitched in this idea and said, if you give us a couple $100,000, I want to get the best juniors. He sort of identified this gap between the juniors that were winning world championships and the elite squad, and how many of them failed to sort of progress to the Olympic team. And he wanted to plug that middle ground. And he found a bunch of dreamers. And I think back to how we were, and I don't know what we thought about life, and how we conducted ourselves, in good and bad ways. But I mean, man alive, Rod was the best mentor we could have ever had. And I think it's no coincidence that, out of that group of 6, I think I was the third most successful, really.
with some Olympic gold medals in your pocket,
Yeah, I know I did all right. I've got 3 Olympic golds, a bronze, 5 or 6 world championships, and a good domestic road career. And all that pales into insignificance alongside Gerraint and Cav. And
Bramier 6 national titles, or maybe even more. He'll abuse me for that. I think I got it wrong. I think he actually has more than 6 if you count TT and Road.
Yeah, he's an underrated rider, was Matt. And a massively influential part of that academy group. When you think back, he was, in my memory at least, it was sort of him and Cav were like the alphas of the group. And Matt was very much a leader, like a born leader, I thought. And it's no coincidence he's still in British cycling now, and he's still heading up their academy, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So
circle of life.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing to me is that the times have changed. I'll give it that. But Rod never really did aerodynamics. He didn't do sports science. He didn't do physiology. There was nothing about him in that regard that made the group successful. He was just big on, I guess, values and principles, if that makes sense. So really
expand on that a little bit. What sort of values and principles?
Yeah, he literally sat us down around the table and got us to write down our team values. So it's turn up on time, dress appropriately, be respectful to the staff, make sure the house is clean before you go to bed. And, you know, he made us write our own punishments is probably the right word. You know, if we didn't, yeah. So we had like a list of values, and I think he even made it like print it out, and we stuck it on our bedroom walls. And then alongside it, we had like a list of punishments that sort of held us accountable to our own values. Hence, you've probably read a few stories about us cleaning cars in the car park and in the velodrome, and, you know, having sort of punishment track sessions where we're endlessly riding around the top of the velodrome for 3 hours straight with no water and so on. And yeah, I mean, all of that stuff we wrote ourselves. So yeah, it was good. And you know, I think, you know, in any team, in any walk of life, just adhering to like good solid values is the foundation on which success can be built. And yeah, I think that served us well over the years.
Yeah, because if you think about now, buzzwords are around corporate culture and building this atmosphere in teams. But do you think it starts much earlier than that? Like, it's the classic nature versus nurture, and we get to look at it from a really young age here, from you guys at 17 years old, where you start. Did you come with these values, or did Rod instill these values into you guys?
Good question. I mean, I essentially work in, I've got this active travel commissioner job today, and I won't bore you with the long and short of it all, but it's really a behavior change project, right? So you're looking at how can you get people to change their sort of like daily routines and daily habits to integrate a bit of activity and so on, right? Now, there's loads and loads of research and evidence to show that, you know, if you get kids in their formative years, you know, in sort of like the first 7, 8, 9 years of life, that's where their interest, their belief, even like their moral compass is almost hardwired in these formative years, right? So I reckon almost all of us, you know, me, Cav, Geraint, we had a little conversation before, like out the recording about like, you know, how cycling can sort of find a certain type of character, but we all had like a bit of an obsessive interest in what we were doing, right? And that probably came from very much our formative years. But to answer your question, yeah, I think Rod instilled those values in us. I don't think we came as people that would naturally turn up on time, people that would naturally, you know, understand the principles of a high-performing team, this idea of synergy and collaboration and honesty. Rod was big on feedback, and he was big on honesty. Like, you know, if Rod ever caught us out for, you know, if we sort of filled in our training diary and we said we were happy with how it went, but he knew we weren't, if he ever caught us out for, you know, he'd openly say, like, look, lads, if you go out on the piss and you turn up hungover for your ride the next day, that's fine, but he wants to know about it. Be honest. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, talking about high performance teams, like you just said there, in my opinion, every high performing team will have some sort of system or mechanism for welcoming the truth. And yeah, I think Rod always believed that really strongly.
It's so different to outside perception of British cycling, because outside perception of British cycling is it's wind tunnels, it's marginal gains, it's analyzing data, it's, you know, digital scales, weighing food. But this is like real Mr. Miyagi stuff, because just as you were talking there, I'm struck by that saying of how you do anything is how you do everything. There's no point in giving the 22-year-old kid access to, you know, specialists in the wind tunnel who are getting paid €5,000 an hour if the guy shows up late, if the guy is not respectful to the staff.
Yeah, honestly, you've just reminded me, like, I don't know what Matt Bramia, funnily enough, is what's going through his head right now. I haven't spoken to him for a couple of months, but if you look at his Instagram page, he's putting up posts that says that. He's sort of like giving advice out to youngsters, literally saying, before you start worrying about wind tunnels and marginal gains and, like you said, weighing out your grams of protein or whatever it is, you've just got to start with some real basics. And I'm not saying you can do cycling in 2025 at the highest level without that. I'm just saying you'd be smart to start with a foundation of good principles, good values, and that's the foundation of like everything else that you can build on top of that. I think if you can start with a good set of values and principles, you know, basic understanding of what makes a high performing team, and you have to do it these days. I don't care how talented or strong you are. I mean, times have changed. We got away with not doing it. But these days, even at junior level, it's an uncomfortable truth, I think, that they have to do the marginal gains thing. They have to get in a wind tunnel with a bespoke made skin suit if they want to be a fast track rider, or whatever it is, a 20 grand S Works. It's really hard not to. And the standard is higher. And I said it's an uncomfortable truth, and I think it is. I mean, and I'm sure I don't know what the solution is. There's been talk about the domestic road racing scene, and a huge part of the problem is the cost. If you marry up like the increasing cost of stuff, petrol, hotels, bikes, skin suits, being competitive, and you kind of marry that up with the cost of living crisis, the big blip that we all had to go through with coronavirus, it's struggling, and I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. For me, it's the biggest problem facing cycling at the moment. I done a podcast recently around Paranormal, and it wasn't just Paranormal I was picking on. It's just the rise of those fashion brands in cycling. And because for me, there was a point, I can't remember when it changed, but I know when I was out in France, it wasn't, the social credibility didn't go to the person who dressed the best, who had the newest kit. It went to the person with the best legs. It went to the person who could take their rain cape off in a crosswind at 60k an hour, who knew how to ride an echelon, who knew how to descend. That was the guy who had the social credibility within the group. But at some point, I can't exactly put my finger on it, that flipped, and it went from this idea of, if anyone raced out in France, I heard that expression, le métier, like the apprenticeship. It went from the idea of becoming an apprentice, and an apprentice starts with humble tools, and an apprentice, he earns the right to use good tools. We went from that to you can buy membership into cycling. And I know proponents of it will say, oh, inclusion is amazing, but you can push inclusion so far that it de facto starts to exclude people, especially lower socioeconomic groups, from it. And participation rates, Ireland and the UK across races. I'm not saying this is the only reason, but for me, it's the biggest threat to cycling at the moment. It's the consumer culture of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sort of conflicted because, to me, and obviously I'm biased, and obviously I grew up with, start with what I was going to say earlier, like, in my formative years, I just loved bikes, and I didn't love, necessarily the Tour de France. I didn't love marginal gains. As a kid, and probably like yourself, I just loved fun, freedom, exploration, hanging out with my pals on the mountain bikes, and then, you kind of get into sport and it becomes like a very aspirational thing. And like, I sit here now as a 40-year-old fella on the other side of a professional, in inverted commas, career. And like, I'm just like a massive kid again. Like, I couldn't care less about like, what's my FTP? What do I weigh? What's, how much does my bike weigh? I just couldn't care less. It's just the same stuff I enjoyed as a kid. And that's fine. The sport is struggling domestically. It is out of reach for so many people. Like, it really is. And, I spend my working life these days as an active travel commissioner, which very much looks at movement and sport and physical activity at the total opposite end of the spectrum of elite sports.
Yeah.
And I've also started work within British Cycling in the social impact team, primarily looking after this foundation. And, both of these projects are at the opposite end of the spectrum to marginal gains, wind tunnels, and so on. But when you spend a bit of time in this world, like I have, you realize just how many people, like, I mean, there's schools, there's almost whole like towns and villages I see that, half the kids can't afford a spare set of trainers, let alone a bike.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not talking about a racing bike. I'm talking about a bike that's been recycled through a local cycling hub.
This just kills me though, because we've sorry to cut across you, but we've just a disconnect. You know, there's been some great technological advancements like Uber, connected dudes who are sitting there with a spare car with people who needed a lift somewhere. Airbnb, you have an empty home, it connects someone with someone that needs a home. But it's like, I've got just bikes, old bikes, which I'd say now are, you know, shit group sets, like a 10-speed 105 group set, a 9-seat Ultegra group set. These are very functional group sets. You can go and win bike races on these group sets, and they're sitting in my attic, and there's not a mechanism to connect me with someone who needs those. I don't want cash for them. Take them. Same with cycling kits. Like, I spoke to Rebecca Rush. She's been 7-time world champion across a bunch of different sports, 21-year Red Bull athlete. She's just like an outdoor junkie. When you chat to her, she's born to live in a forest and do these crazy adventures. But she's heavily in cycling for the last decade. But she was talking about climbing as well. And in climbing, it's a badge of honor to use worn kit. Like, if you show up to a climbing weekend with all new kit, people will look at you like you're dangerous. You got to stay away from Ed. He's got new kit. He's going to take us all down the mountain. The wornness, the raggedness of your kit represents your experience level. We don't have that in cycling. Kit's disposable. Both apparel and wheels, bikes, it's all disposable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice thought, isn't it? That, like, you know, as soon as your racing bike or your mountain bike's got a few battle scars on it, that it looks used, you know. But it's not like that, is it? It's just a culture of, like, I don't know, shiny, glossy stuff. And it's all good. I mean, I think a lot about what is the solution? What is the solution to helping juniors make racing accessible? And, you know, I hear a lot of people saying, well, maybe we should standardize frames. Maybe we should standardize wheels so everyone's got to ride, whatever it is, 28 spoked wheels or more, which is fine. But the problem is, if we did that, and let's pretend, you know, everyone had to race on a metal frame with metal forks with 28 spokes in the wheel, people just look for the next thing that they can work on. They'd be like, okay, well, I'm just going to invest all my time and effort and energy in biomechanics, in wind tunnels, in helmets, in special socks, and we'll start spending a fortune there, and people will. So, I mean, unless you get to a point like a Japanese keirin where it's like, I
was just thinking of that when you were saying it.
Yeah. If we standardize everything, you know, helmets, skin suits, overshocks, bikes, I mean, I won't bore you with the nerdy detail, but I've, you know, spent the last couple of years prior to these jobs working the research and innovation team, and the ridiculous thing is some standardized skin suits would work better on different body shapes and sizes than others, which gives them a natural advantage, if that makes sense. It's there's just no easy answers. And
is it a cultural change? That's not an easy answer for sure. That's a very complicated and drawn out answer, but like, I see guys on the group ride and they'll drop €4,000 on a set of wheels, and you're looking at them going, mate, you'd just be much better learning how to go around the corner better.
You would. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when you look at you know, it's always been the case, you know, if you look back at the last decades even of the guys that are winning on the track, on the road, it's the guys, you know, back to the earlier conversation, that have like good foundations, good values, good principles of high performance at least, and then they do the whole marginal gains thing on top of that, and they can also do bike handling skills, they can communicate effectively with the DS, with the teammates, and that's when you see like a whole package come together, and at that point you become unstoppable. But it's people would rather, and I see this firsthand, man, they'd literally rather spend $4,000 on wheels than learn how to brake for a corner. You know what I mean? I won't name names, but I've met some like unbelievably high performance cyclists that don't even know which is their front brake and their back brake. They're just like, I just pull them together, and I'm like, I don't believe it. Yeah.
But there is something cultural in that when you can buy a destination and remove the process. But then it's almost, is the destination valuable? Like, I'm thinking about, sorry, I'm talking quite abstract there. I was just chatting this morning with a friend about the weight loss drug Ozempic. And we're like, okay, so now you can buy being slim in a pill. So everyone's been striving for whatever that being slim represents, the podium, the six pack. But if you can if you can purchase your way to get straight there, does it still have meaning? Or is actually having a six pack, as someone said, is it actually a story of the nights out you didn't have, a story of the pizzas you didn't order? And the process to getting the six pack is what's valuable. Like the discipline to show up at the gym, to not eat that food. That's actually the valuable part of the whole thing and not the destination of it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, and hey, I'm not the most successful person you've ever spoke to on this podcast, but you know, through my own experience and my own opinion, you know, there was a set of kids that were dreaming about becoming Olympic champions, becoming Tour de France winners in the academy days, and you know, like I said, like 3 out of 6 of us, maybe 4 out of 6 of us, sort of achieved whatever dreams we had. And yeah, take it from me, like it's, you kind of realize as a middle-aged bloke looking back on it all, you never wanted the destination, you just wanted progress. You wanted purpose, meaning, a sense of cohesion in your life. That was the best bit about it, the journey. And you know, I look at, yeah, I literally, I don't even know where my Olympic medals are right now. I lent them to some a fella that I work with called James in British Cycling last week, and he took them home for a week and showed his kids, and it's like, you know, I mean, like, it's not like I wouldn't miss them if they never came back, but I'm really, honestly, I just like, yeah, it was great, but you know, I appreciate the relationships, I appreciate the journeys, I appreciated all the battles that I won and lost, but you know, I don't wake up in the morning feeling smug because I've got some, you know, gold medals that are probably worth 200 quid if you melt them down for gold, hanging around in my basement somewhere. I couldn't care less about what money's in my bank account. Like, the most meaningful thing to me is like the Sunday morning I can get out on my electric mountain bike with my pals and take my brain out for a few hours and just enjoy life. Yeah.
Culturally, within that house and within that academy on the way up, I'm thinking even pre-Beijing, did you guys have a atmosphere where it was, we can all win? And let me expand on that. By that I mean, when I chatted to Olaf Boo, the triathlon coach, he coached at the time Gustav Eden and Christian Blumenfeld, who were number 1 and number 2 in the world. They were each other's biggest competitors, yet they trained together every day. And as soon as one of them went away and found a breakthrough in a wind tunnel with fueling, with stride, they would come back and they would share that breakthrough with his biggest competitor, just so they both kept leveling up. And I just walked away from that and I reflected on it. I thought, culturally, how difficult that is to create that atmosphere where I'll take my biggest win, my new secret weapon, and I'll share it with my closest rival in order to level up the whole game. Did you guys inside, if you find something, are you texting G like, oh, look, I found this gain?
Yeah, you know what? I 100% I would have done. And, you know, we did. I mean, talking about Gerraint, I grew up with a fella and did, you know, a couple of the massive Olympics. Beijing was the first one where everything really took off. London, obviously, a home Olympic Games, and you know, sort of formed bonds through those races that, you know, you can no other way. But yeah, so of course we did. You know, everything, you know, I found was sort of shared out, and you know, I spent a lot of time in the wind tunnel, you know, from the real early days with Chris Boardman, and you know, we were finding things there that didn't just got shared with the Team Pursuit or Gerraint. It was, you know, the wider Great Britain cycling team. But it was relatively easy for me because, I mean, you know, when I was riding the Omnium, I guess I was kind of the standout rider ahead of 2012 Olympics. So I didn't really have loads of in-house competition for that space. And obviously I was often involved in the Team Pursuit, which is a team event. So you want to share your knowledge with your teammates. Yeah. Now, if you ask me, would I share some of that knowledge with the Aussies? I'd be like, no, I'd rather like stitch my mouth shut than, you know, divulge any data or evidence we've got that's going to make us faster. So absolutely not. You know, I'd have took that information to the grave if there was a gun pointed to my head. So that probably gives you an idea about how we operated. Yeah.
Did Geraint and Cavendish change through the years, or are they still the same people from 17 to... It's almost hard to fathom the level of their fame within cycling. Like, there's nothing bigger than winning the Tour de France, and if there is anything bigger than winning the Tour de France, it's winning the record number of stages in the Tour de France. They're two of the world's biggest ever stars, and it's kind of hard to imagine from this part of the world, because I know even the guys would have raced the Junior Tour of Ireland, and you see the pictures of them, and it's not Bartolé copy from these faraway lands and Pantani where he's this romance around that you kind of feel like, oh, they're one of the boys. Like,
Yeah, I mean, so you asked about Cav and Geraint there, and I'll tell you what I think about both of them. Geraint, let's start with Cav. Cav. Now, Cav, he was when we were on that academy, like he was the one person that really believed his own dreams. Like, you know, he would have told you when he was 17, 18 years old that he's going to be the best sprinter in the world. And for what it's worth, I think there's probably something in that. And, you know, obviously that dream materialized. And I think he did change, like Cav changed. And we kind of always knew it was going to happen. And, you know, he had funny man bags and fancy cars. And yeah, I mean, I think the truth is, like, you know, he changed. But I think the best thing, and I mean this in like, you know, a really genuine way, is that he had a period of time that we all saw where he struggled, right? And that, for Cav as a person, I think did him like the world of good. And I remember speaking to him once, and you know, I sat on my sofa up there upstairs, after he'd sort of like, he was starting to go through these sort of tough times. And I just kind of feel like it, you know, he was always fiery, he was always passionate, he was always up and down. You know, he was always very obsessed with things, and he still does. And but I think that was the best thing that happened for him, going through a few tough times. And I remember him telling me one day he sold all his cars and he drives around in this van now. And, you know, he wears a tracksuit most of the time. And yeah, I love Cav. And I feel like he's gone full circle. He's back to whoever he started as a 17-year-old.
and that's the story arc that we're most attracted to, isn't it? Like, no one loves the person who comes from nothing and becomes all conquering. It's like what Tade is missing at the moment. It's the bit of had it all, lost it, came back and won again. Cav had that perfect story arc that we're just all so attracted to.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, as a personality, he's sort of gone full circle as well, I think. And he's the same person he was when he was 17, 18 that I knew back then now. And yeah, and Gerraint, I honestly don't think he's changed one iota. I mean, I flew out to see him for a weekend in Monaco last year, and you know, he was, despite I'm sure all the money he's got in the bank and things like that, he can pretty much wear what he wants, travel how he wants, drive what he wants. You know, he's going around Monaco in like some knackered old jeans and a t-shirt on this moped, and he just doesn't care. You know what I mean? He just hasn't changed a bit. He's a great guy, well recognized. You know, even out there was every British tourist was like, "Oh, you Geraint Thomas," and you know, taking a picture. But that aside, it was just like the old days. Yeah.
Do you have any regret about the direction that you went? The guys obviously at some point flicked the switch and went road. You stayed in lane on track. You could argue maybe track representing the country has more prestige. Undoubtedly, road has more upside financially.
I think, you know, during my career, obviously, like, you know, when you're young in your 20s and 30s, you kind of, you know, what you're really looking for. And of course, you want to represent sort of, you know, Queen and country. But obviously, like every athlete, you have this sort of innate desire for fame, fortune, simple pleasures, maybe. Do you know what I mean? And of course, you look across or you look over your shoulder and be like, oh, bloody hell, yeah, so and so's making 7 figures now. And you're like, oh, that'd be nice. And you kind of, I mean, the truth is, I didn't have the potential to be part of that. You know, I think on the road, I had potential to be good enough to carry bottles for somebody that was making 7 figures,
or potentially lead out one of the fastest men of all time.
Yeah, I mean, on the plus side, you know, I was making good money domestically. You know, when you're approaching your home Olympics and on the back end of your home Olympics, there's money to be made off, you know, public speaking, commercial partnerships and things like that. And you wouldn't have had access to that.
Yeah.
So financially, I don't really feel like I missed out on my potential. And anyway, I was watching Jimmy Carr the other day and somebody heckled him from the audience and said, "Are you rich?" To which Jimmy Carr replied, "Well, how do you define rich?" because in my head, you're rich if how much money you earn doesn't change what you do. And I guess from that point of view, I still work today, but I kind of do what I want.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer.
The amount of money that like I pull in every month change what I do? No, I mean, I started with pretty humble beginnings. As a broken home from Barnsley, and I've got the potential to afford nice things, and within reason, I can travel in different ways these days. And I still choose to fly on EasyJet and Ryanair. I'll shop at Lidl and Aldi and Home Firth. Like, I get my smart clothes from M&S and everything else I just get from a charity shop. I drive a van. I use public transport. I just don't care. It's not. Yeah, those things don't interest me. Yeah,
there's a quiet confidence to that, though. That's in some ways the ultimate flex.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good quote, isn't it? If you're looking at your Rolex to see when your lunch break starts, it's not a flex. Yeah, I think the real luxuries in life are sort of sleeping well, being at ease, having the ability to move as slow or as fast in life as you want. And yeah, to me, that's the real luxury. That and health, you know what I mean? When you get to my age, you start seeing people lose that. And then I think you quickly realise what really matters.
Yeah, our cycling lost one of their legends there last week. Glad I would have come up. Craig Sweetman, 52 years old, I think, as a young lad. Toby just won a stage at the Junior Tour of Ireland. Fit, still Cat 1 fitness, and literally just went to bed, didn't wake up the next day. And it just underscores to me, like we're not here for a long time, and you just don't know when your ticket's going to be punched.
No, really. And I mean, I know these guys obviously aren't in my circle, but I kind of feel like I grew up with like Hulk Hogan was like, a young adult when I was a kid,
yeah. And
Ozzy Osbourne was a young adult when I was a kid. And I'm like, bloody hell, like both these guys are gone last week. And they're still a couple of decades ahead of me, but that's pretty much it. Just a couple of decades ahead. And I'm like, wow, that's probably going to go a lot quicker than the previous 2 decades. So yeah, we better start living life and being happy.
I've seen a great meme there. Hulk Hogan went to the gym 6 days a week for 40 years, dies at 72. Ozzy Osbourne took hard drugs 6 days a week for 40 years, lives till 76.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure genetics plays a part in these things, but yeah, R.I.P. to both of them. And I'd say it was Ozzy's funeral yesterday, and yeah, it was great to see the turnout that showed up, because he was 1 in a million, wasn't he?
There was nothing more badass. I remember that's kind of early, 20s, kind of formative, where you're kind of still a little unsure what's cool, and going to training camps over in the Alps, and there was nothing more badass than just sticking Ozzy on. It was just such a safe choice. It's like it gave you credibility straight away.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, I sort of get targeted now with like Ozzy Osbourne memes and clips on Instagram, and there was definitely a lot of good in Ozzy. Like I was watching him like with his walking stick going around his garden looking for this cat, like swearing at this cat.
I got that one as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, eventually he finds the thing and he picks it up, and he was like, oh, I didn't want it to get taken out by coyotes or something. I was like, oh, bless him. He might be mental, but yeah, he had a good heart.
It was great entertainment. Take me back for a second to, I suppose, when I look at your career on paper, and easy for me to do, I look at one huge inflection point, 2008, Beijing Olympics. I think you would have been 23, if my math's right on it. I think I read somewhere, you later said ignorance was bliss around that. They almost didn't know what you didn't know. What did you mean by that, and how pivotal was that 2008 games?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The truth is, I mean, the story of the Great Britain, the rise of the Great Britain cycling team is way bigger than my personal story. And, again, back to when I was a kid, I remember there was a guy that probably somewhat inspired me to take up cycling called Chris Bowman, won a gold medal in 2000. Sorry, was it 1992? Barcelona.
92.
Yeah, won a gold medal, Barcelona 92. And then 8 years later, there was Jason Queally, won a gold medal in the year 2000. And then things started picking up in 2004. And then in Beijing, we pretty much won everything. And I think, not just me, but like so many people in that Beijing team just kind of went there thinking like, right, we kind of think we can do well. We think we can win this, but are we really going to win everything? And yeah, I mean, it turns out we pretty much did. And I wouldn't say we'd have gone there and got a bronze medal and been happy, but I don't know. I just kind of felt like if we go there and we get a bronze, that'd be great. If we get a silver, even better. If we get a gold, that'd be mint. And what I meant by ignorance is bliss is that, I don't know, there was no pressure, there was no expectation, I didn't feel any weight of the world on my shoulders. Do you know what I mean? I didn't realize what we were about to do. I didn't realize what we were about to become, as we approached, not just me and us as a team pursuit, but I didn't realize what the Great Britain cycling team was going to become on the way to 2012. And we were in a little ignorant bubble of bliss that just kind of like waltzed on with no attention, completely unnoticed. And and after 2008, things changed.
Roadman, whether you're a weekend warrior or a world tour rider, the right tools can make all the difference. Enter 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter, the latest innovation from 4i, designed to help you reach peak performance. The Precision 3 Plus Power Meter is a compact yet powerful unit. It weighs just 9 grams and it's packed with features that set it apart, including integration with Apple's Find My network, giving you the peace of mind by letting you track your power meter wherever it is. Plus, you've got up to 800 hours of battery life. We all know that accuracy is key, and 4i's delivers a groundbreaking plus or minus 1% accuracy thanks to their unique 3D strain gauge technology. For those seeking even more data, the Precision 3 Plus Pro Power Meter offers dual-sided power meter metrics, giving you detailed insights into pedaling efficiency, torque effectiveness, and left-right balance. 4i's offers versatile product options to suit your needs. Choose from ride-ready power meters with pre-installed units on Shimano cranks, or up for factory-installed power meter where you send in your crankset for a custom installation. Ready to elevate your cycling game? Trust 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter. Precision, performance, and peace of mind all in one. Learn more by visiting 4iiii.com. That's 4iiii.com. I'm going to put that in the description down below. Look, you could look at it almost as an inflection point, not just in your story or GB story, but in the story of cycling. It really marked the onset of the chase for marginal gains. Like, I remember chatting to a friend of mine who's riding for Team Sky back in 2012, Michael Barry, and he was telling me when Sky started rocking up to races with speed suits on, they literally get laughed at by German and Dutch lads on the start line. That started in 2008, where you guys started looking for answers to questions that nobody else was asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell you what, I think as early as 2006, I remember being in a wind tunnel with Chris Boardman. Funnily enough, the same guy I was sat down with face to face yesterday in Sheffield talking about active travel. Now, Chris Boardman back then was heading up our research and innovation team. Now, those that are of my age will just about remember Chris Boardman as being the guy that turned up with the Lotus Superbike to sort of like, all those years back, really push the envelope with aerodynamics and what was possible. And he was leading, and he never, in my opinion, he never really got the praise he deserved for everything we've achieved in 2008, 2012 onwards. There's a lot, understandably, Brailsford, a lot of talk about Dave Brailsford. But yeah, Chris led that research and innovation piece. And there was a couple of like breakthrough moments as early as 2006 where I went into a wind tunnel, put on a skin suit that had like pretty basic, in today's terms, like aero trips, as we call them.
Long way from the Vortex speed suits.
Yeah, long way from what we currently have. We literally had like two sort of like stripes down either arm, of quite a prominent sort of like 1 or 2 millimeter sort of ridge. And that was the start of trips. But what that meant in empirical terms was about 4.5%. Now, if a lot of your listeners will be cyclists and you're a cyclist yourself, and if somebody said, right, today, your FTP is not going to be 385 watts. It's going to be 400 watts, you know, give or take 4%. Like at that point, you'd be like, yeah, what's the catch? Do you know what I mean? That's a hell of a step. And that's just a skin suit. When we stuck on a decent helmet, the oversocks, you know, it's no wonder we moved the game on. And that's really where it started. And, you know, people talk about, and it is, marginal gains is like, it's an engineering project in mechanical terms, but really, and I bet Dan Binger would tell you the same, like the whole thing about marginal gains is it's about a mindset. It's about having a curiosity, having a willingness to learn, to try different stuff. Do you know what I mean? To interpret the rules in a different way, if you like. Yeah. That's literally what F1 is built on. Engineers interpreting the rules in different ways. And yeah, I think we kicked off that whole marginal gains thing in 2008. People accuse us of doping because we won by so much. The funny thing is now that, like, you know, every team in the top 15 would go way quicker than we went in Beijing. And we were just ahead of the game aerodynamically. And yeah, they're still doing a good job. Like the Great Britain cycling team are still trying hard to stay ahead of that learning curve, but it's getting harder and harder for them.
What underscores how far the track stuff has come, the individual pursuit times now are as fast as the team pursuit. Like, what's Jonathan Milan's gone sub 4 minutes for 4K?
Yeah. Right. As juniors, talking about that initial junior team, so me, Cav, Geraint, Bramia, I remember we did a flying kilo. So we got to the top of the track, built up as much speed as we could, dropped into the black line at the bottom, and we did 1 kilometer in under 1 minute. So basically we were on 4-minute pace, right, for a team pursuit. And we got off the track and we were like, wow, we can't believe how fast we were going there. We were talking about the G-force in the banking was unbelievable. We were talking about having a speed wobble down the straights and things. And yeah, now they do that in an individual pursuit from a standing start. Yeah, for 4K.
For someone who hasn't ridden track, there's not many feelings in cycling as fun as being on top of the track and dropping in for a flying effort. It's that, like, it's just, you feel like a child.
You do, yeah, you do. I mean, the track racing is a beautiful thing. I know I'm biased, but it's so accessible as well. Like, you know, if you're a leisure cyclist, if you're a commuter, you know, if you do a little bit of whatever it is, basic racing, like, you know, you can turn up to a velodrome, you can hire a bike and a helmet and shoes and everything for like 20 quid. I'm like, just give it a go. I'm not saying you've got to buy yourself a $7,000 bike and go racing track league, whatever. Just, it's worth a try, because when you're turning off the top, it is like nothing else. Yeah.
I've actually got a great story about that. So I came back for the run up to Tokyo on the tandem, and brilliant fun if you haven't ridden a tandem, because it just goes faster. It's so much fun riding the tandem. But I'm circling at the top of the velodrome with this visually impaired lad, John. He's gas, man. Didn't play by the rules now, this lad. And no respect for authority. So we're circling at the top. But it just kind of hit home to me, because I've been on the road for a lot of years at this point. You know, you're getting bits of experience picking it up off other people, and just how new he was. So we're circling at the top, getting ready to drop in for a flying 2K or something. And I'm waiting for the other guy, as would be normal, to finish his efforts down the bottom of the track. So I'm up there, and John shouts at me, "How many laps to go?" I was like, "We haven't dropped in yet, mate." And at that moment, I knew we were fucked.
Yeah.
If he's given his best effort right now, and we haven't even dropped in, it wasn't good. Yeah, it's so much fun, though.
I tell you what, like, a flying 200 is way harder than people think, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
If you have a proper go at flying 200, you've got a massive great gear on that takes some moving, and then just getting to the top of the track, building speed is hard work, and really it is a 3.5 lap effort in my head.
Yeah, there's no lonelier place than coming apart in track racing. Like a pursuit, you lock up with, you just know, because you start losing the cadence with 4 laps to go or something, and it's like, you just know the splits are going to, and then if you're in training or something, the manager stops calling the splits, you just know this is bad.
Yeah, I mean, like, having these conversations brings back so many memories of, like, you know, the best moments of your life, you know, like, you go, it's very exposing, is track racing. You know, imagine the Home Olympics, there's 100 million people watching on TV. It's the 4 minutes that's going to potentially change your life. And
Everyone's going to watch you have the best day of your life or the worst day of your life. And, you know, of course, when you get it right and you stood on top of the podium with three of your best mates, like there's no drug you can take. There's no amount of money you can make that will make you feel like that. I really believe that. And of course, when you get it wrong, like you said, you know, if you mess up, like you've been on a tandem, I've been in a team pursuit, you don't just let yourself down, you let all your teammates down, you let all the people that have come out to cheer you down. And yeah, it's crushing. It breaks you, and it's you're so exposed.
Did life change after Beijing? Because you give the whole, like, especially British media, for anyone who's not British, like, we don't get the same media here in Ireland. The British media is intense, whether it's on the royal family or it's on sport, for good and bad. It really shines a spotlight on people.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in two different ways. In sort of mechanical terms, yes, like you know, you start making more money, you start being recognised a bit, particularly as the approach to Home Olympics comes, particularly after the Home Olympics. And in the mechanical sense, yeah, your life does change, and it's my whole life's taken a different route thanks to a couple of key moments early on, right? But I think this is the biggest misconception, is that like a feeling of success or a feeling of that change isn't at all what you'd think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I spoke to Kelly Holmes, or Dame Kelly Holmes, on this, and she almost felt a little bit trapped by the success. Especially she'd a complicated relationship with her own sexuality, and she was just trying to discover that in the glare of the British media, and she felt trapped in an old version of a story she told and didn't have a freedom to retell her new story.
From my perspective, I feel like I had this idea that you were going to become upon this thing that was going to like bestow upon you all the wisdom and knowledge and happiness and everything you needed to feel complete and done, right? But the reality is that humans are not wired to be happy with things you've achieved in the past. We're just not, right? And yeah, the best way I can describe it, which has been described to me by psychiatrists, therapists, and so on, is that, like, physically our bodies have this thing called homeostasis, right? So if me and you go out tonight, we have 12 pints, we'll have a good time, we'll have some happy hormones fly around our body, and then to super compensate, we'll sleep for 24 hours, we'll feel pretty rough, and then your body sort of self-regulates. The mind does exactly the same. So this has been well studied in lottery winners, funnily enough. You win the lottery, and overnight, people are dead happy. They've got everything they've ever wanted. They've got a big mansion, they've got a Bentley, you've got a helicopter, and so on. And after a period of 6 to 18 months, almost everyone comes back down to the same baseline of happiness that they started at. Same is true for when a tragic event happens. You lose a loved one, something terrible happens. 6 to 18 months, you always have this like mental homeostasis. You turn back to where it started. And it was just like that for winning the Olympics. And every single time we won an Olympics, I'd give it 6 to 12 months. I was like, right, well, I'm not really living on a big high anymore. This is just life. You self-regulate. So what do? You think, oh, maybe I'd be happy if I won a second one. Maybe I'd be happy if I won a third one. Maybe I'd be happy if I won a fourth one. And then, you just about get to the point where I'm 40 now and you kind of realize, well, maybe that's not the key.
Yeah, I see this with outside sport as well, with friends who've had big exits from companies, and the advice they've given me is you need to be happy to begin, because if you're not happy right now, no event is going to change that happiness. You get the 8-figure exit, amazing, you sit on a beach for 4 weeks with someone feeding you grapes, and then you wake up on the 5th week and you're like, get those grapes away from me. Like, I need to just get back to being a normal person, and then it's like it never happened.
Yeah. I think, mate, I'm exactly the same. I've done a few corporate bike rides and things, and the amount of business people I've met that they tell you these wild stories about where they've come from and like what they've built up, and then they sold it. And then, yeah, it took them only a matter of weeks, maybe a month or two, to realize that they were actually more depressed than they'd ever been. And yeah, that's what I love about bikes. I think bikes, the great outdoors, the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other and experiencing nature, it saves people. I've literally met business people that, would, in their words, cycling saved their life. I like that.
But that's what you need to be. And I guess this is maybe my lesson for anyone junior that's starting that process now. You need to be careful in the process that you don't totally build a moat around yourself and alienate yourself. Because when you finish the event and you go back to normal life, you need to have mates, you need to have family relationships. Michael Phelps, for me, is, the greatest Olympian of all time statistically. And if you listen to him talking about having suicidal thoughts, it's like I think his quote was, if you're the most successful Olympian of all time, but you've no one to celebrate it with, is it still success?
So to me, like, the word focus is interesting. Now, it's almost a word that's glamorized in sport, business or anything else. And, to be successful in sport, you have to focus, right? And people are like, yeah, focus on your sport. But what the word focus really means to me, I think 90% of the word focus is saying no. So if you're focusing on being an Olympian or a professional sports person or a Michael Phelps, that means you're saying no to friends, families, Christmases, birthdays, funerals, weddings, social occasions. And that's works. It doesn't make you a well-rounded person. It makes you very successful at the thing that you're focused on. But in every other aspect of life, you're a failure. And, I think perhaps he, like myself, had this romantic idea that when you finish a sport, you're kind of going to go back into like, and I've seen this all the time, like people like, yeah, I'm just going to finish my career and then we're going to get married and settle down and have a family. And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And, I had this idea of like, yeah, I'll finish. I'm going to spend more time like doing social stuff and reconnecting with my old friends. And they've already gone. Do you know what I mean? It's not like that. It's the world's moved on without you.
Hey everybody, let's take a quick break to talk about the bike I'll be riding this season, Reap. I've been lucky enough to ride all the top brands in the world over the past few years, but these Reap bikes, they're not the same, and I'll tell you why. Reap is the first company I've seen that isn't chasing sales targets and the mass market. They're chasing something very rare, perfection. Every bike they make, it's crafted in the UK factory, and it's not about slapping a Made in Britain label on a bike from a Chinese factory. It's about control. From the first sketch to the final build, they're hands-on, ensuring that every detail is dialed in. That's very rare in an outsourced world of mass production. What sets them apart is innovation. While others pump out the same old designs, Reap's pushing boundaries. They're not following trends, they're setting trends. Think precision and performance, like an F1 car for the road. Absolutely no compromises. And it shows, and you can feel it when you ride the bikes. These bikes are built for riders who demand the best, whether they're chasing podiums or just want a machine that feels like an extension of your body, a piece of art. It's not hype, it's substance. Ride a Reap for yourself and you're riding something crafted with intent. So if you're serious about cycling, check them out. It's reapbikes.com. I absolutely love my one and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Back to the show. Look, I didn't hit anywhere near the same heights you did. Very modest cycling career, but a lot of the similar, and it's even more tragic in some cases because you make some of the same sacrifices but you don't get any of the same upside. Like, I remember going back after I finished cycling, saying no to all the nights out, all the parties, even if it was doing something social, you'd just show face and you'd leave. And then you finish this pursuit of trying to make it in cycling, whatever that means, make it. But you finish that pursuit and you think you can take these friendships back off the shelf. And it's like, one mate in particular, I remember having a chat with him and he's just like, he's like, honestly, we were good mates when we were kids, but he's like, you just weren't there for me. He's like, you weren't there all the times I needed you. And he's like, that's what friendship is. And I was like, had this moment going, like, he's totally right. I just wasn't a good mate. All I was self-focused on one thing.
Yeah. Oh, mate, for what it's worth, I think and this is a moment I reflect on too much. But yeah, I mean, you quickly mentioned earlier, so, I came from a sort of divorced background. I never saw my sort of biological father again. But also I never saw any of his sort of family again. And, there was a sort of a random moment, let's say, is, I sort of stumbled back into that arena briefly, only to kind of find that, not just that you'd missed out on decades, but, after people that you just assumed would still be there, they're all gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, literally, in a physical sense, they were dead. And you're like, what the hell? I mean, and, at that point you think, shit, man, I'd give anything to sort of go back in time, or, think about things differently, or, perhaps just say a few final things. But you can't, and, that stuff's not even on the radar, which is, it's a sad truth of high performance, I think.
Yeah, I don't think high performance is what people outside of high performance think it is. I think high performance is lonely. High performance happens in the shadows, I heard someone saying. And I think that's kind of a nice expression that sums up a lot of what high performance is.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's I think these days I'm very much a fan of, like, just health, physical activity, riding bikes, playing five-a-side with your mates. I love all the sort of like social cohesion that can happen. The idea that doing exercise or sport, either as a keen amateur or an enthusiast, is a great thing. But would I say that elite professional sport is healthy, in inverted commas? No, like, absolutely not. I think you push your body to, like, the absolute outer limits. You know what I mean? Even um, you take you'll take you won't think anything of, like, taking 3 flat whites at Costa Coffee and then getting on your bike and just absolutely rinsing yourself for an hour and just, like, being just physically and mentally exhausted. Um, and it's I don't think it's healthy in the traditional sense. It's not for everyone, yeah. And to be honest, like, if somebody said, like, what's a blueprint for success, I don't think it's that difficult. Like I said, you have to focus. We've talked about what that really means in reality, and you've got to sacrifice everything. But I don't think it's that difficult to give someone a blueprint for success. You could tell them about high performance principles. You tell them, like, what the foundation is, like what marginal gains is, everything you have to sacrifice. I think the hardest thing is not losing yourself on the journey.
Yeah, and for me, even the hardest part of that is right back to the start of that statement. I'm still not entirely sure what success is. It's like when I look at people, you talk about Cav and Gerraint with their money. Is that success? Not for me, no. It's like you talk about other people with medals. It's like, is that success? I don't know, maybe. Like, it's just, the lad with the 8-figure exit, is that success? He's divorced, he's broken, he's miserable, he's fat. It's like, no, that's not success. Like, I'm still trying to find out what my version of that is. And I think if somebody had told me now, same age as you, in my 40s, that I would feel basically the same as I did in my 20s, like that I'd still have the same insecurities, I'd still have the same ambition, I'd still have the same indecision of where I'm going next. I think I might have played the 20s and 30s differently.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what success is either. I reckon we'll probably both work it out, mate, by the last week we have on the planet. But I mean, if somebody said today, like, what's success really about? I think the smartest thing I could tell them is, number one, just try and be a bit kinder to yourself and a bit kinder to others. And number two, I'd tell them that, like, for all of us, like, the most lasting success you can have isn't about money, power, fame, fortune. It's about what you can create and what you can leave behind. How you can make the world slightly better for other people. And I think that's probably the smartest thing I could say.
Before we finish up, and I'd be rinsed if I don't ask about it, 2012, the home games, abiding memories from that.
you kind of know it's, even just thinking about like the event makes me nervous, and brings back like little flashbacks to like, I go down there now and again for like little corporate track sessions and so on, and you kind of remember the big team bus going into the village, and I remember looking down and seeing the trainers, and it's just random little flashbacks. And of course, I remember being sat on the seats outside the the track next to Berkey, Pete Kenner, Geraint, looking at my own reflection in my visor and thinking, right, here we go. This is the one moment I knew we'd be talking about on podcasts for decades to come. And there's 4 confident, relatively outgoing guys, all secretly sat in a hotel room shitting yourself for weeks before it. And then you kind of get on the big line and, go into this like almost like a trance, like an automated state that you've practiced in your mind 1,000 times. And all the nerves go as soon as the beeps go and the gun goes off, and you're in like you are in the zone, and you don't really think about anything else. It's just all automated. And you cross the line, and there's a few suspect moments where have you won, have you lost, you're kind of waiting, you listen to the crowd are cheering, but you don't trust what's happened. And eventually, you're that knackered, your world's kind of gone dark anyway, but you slowly come around to the realization that we've done it, we've won. And then I woke up the next day, all the other 3 had gone out on the Raz, and I was riding the Omnium, and Gerraint was asleep, like just in a massive starfish shape, completely naked. And there was
there's a visual.
And there was like Berkey, he was like hanging out off his bed with his head literally in the bin that he'd been sick in. Pete Kenner had gone missing, and we never saw him for a week. And it was my job to step over the carnage. I went to the Omnium and did that for 2 days, and I got a bronze medal out of that, which was a great result, really, looking back. And the next week was just a blur of media and nightclubs with B-list celebrities, and literally spraying bottles of champagne around our apartment. Champagne was literally dripping off the ceiling. And it was a once in a lifetime thing. And I'll always be super grateful for everyone that made it happen, whether it's Sport England, UK Sport, the British government, British cycling, everyone and anyone that gave me a pat on the back in a supermarket, wished me luck. And no matter where it's brought me or left me, and I'll always be incredibly grateful for that.
I've talked to some guys who've been in war. They fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, and they say the first moment of contact, when bombs start dropping, guns start shooting, you forget about the infrastructure that got you there. You forget about the machinery of war, and all you're doing is fighting for your mate beside you, the lad who you've come through training with. Is it similar when that gun shoots, it's just you and the 3 other boys?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, it means so much to you in the moment. I know it's easy for us to sort of stand here now and be like, talk about what is success really about. And, when me, you and everybody else are on our deathbeds, I don't think we'd tell anyone that it's really important to be a millionaire or to be a success in a bike race. Of course you wouldn't. But at the time, it feels like that's the most important thing you're ever going to do. And the question was about your teammates. I would rather have died 1,000 times than to have let them boys down. That was my biggest fear throughout my whole career. I did team pursuit. That was my thing for decades and decades. My biggest fear wasn't sort of like public, national humiliation. Wasn't my own personal result or anything else. It was, I just didn't want to be shit for the boys.
It's something so beautiful and unique about cycling. This is a great place to leave it, because you will always hurt more for one of your mates than you'll hurt for yourself.
Yeah, you do. Cycling's the best sport in the world for so many reasons, in my opinion. There's no other sport out there that has like such a beautiful marriage of technology and human performance. And I don't think there's any other sport, particularly the road stuff, where you have to be selfless unless you are the leader. You've got to have altruism, like a sense of cooperation and a desire to be part of something bigger than your own individual aspirations. And I think it brings out the best in people. And I like that.
What's occupying your time now? What have you got on the horizon? What have you got coming for us to check out?
Yeah. So right now, I mean, I'm busy working away with an active travel commissioner job. I'm absolutely loving being fully involved with British cycling again. And I have just released a book called Full Gas Forever, which is, it's a book which has been co-wrote by a wonderful lady called Lexi Williams. And I guess, like a lot of sort of cycling Bibles out there, there's chapters on training, equipment, sleep, nutrition, recovery, and so on. And I guess what makes it unique is that, as we've discussed, I'm 40 years old now, and every single chapter in there is tailored and sort of bespoke made to the aging cyclist, a 40-plus cyclist, if you like. So everything I've mentioned there, even biomechanics, your nutrition, your recovery, your sleep, all your training, it changes as you get older. And, you know, banging on about how great cycling is. Cycling's also a great sport or activity because you can do it really, really well into your 40s, 50s, 60s. And that makes it unique. So this book is tailored to people my age and up that still want to keep going full gas.
It's on my list. It's my next book I'm getting it.
Good man.
And I've chatted to dozens of people on the podcast have said to me, recommended you need to chat with Ed Clancy. He's one of the nicest guys in cycling, and it's been an absolute honour. You genuinely are one of the nicest guys in cycling, so thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, it's really kind. Likewise, I've enjoyed it. Thanks, Anthony.